Happy Thursday or whatever night it is to all you out there watching. Welcome to Kaz and my business masterclass. So Kaz and I for a couple of years has been doing a full day masterclass, and our intention was to do a day and a half masterclass in 2021, but current global circumstances have kind of gotten in the way of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick this off and we're going to do our day-long course that we normally do. And we're going to do it in webinar format, which is great. And so today will be part one. Kaz and I together will form part one. And then we'll also be doing another class in the first quarter of 2021. That'll be another 3-hour class. That'll be kind of part two, and that'll be our day-long course in webinar format. So if any of you have ever been to it, we throw a whole bunch of information at you. We're going to do the same thing here. And what I'm going to kick off with is I'm going to be talking more about same-day starts, and Kaz will be talking about culture and efficiency. And so the way that I'm going to start it with is less about the recipe, hey, do this and then do that, and then third step do this, and then have your TC this for same-day starts. We'll get to that in the next class. What I'm going to talk about this evening is more of the mindset behind the things necessary for the change management and the understanding of why same-day starts are important. And that's really the foundation to build everything else on as you move forward and implement or become better at same-day starts in your office. So we will be talking some numbers from OrthoFi. For those of you that aren't really aware, OrthoFi is a software and who's also sponsoring this these webinar series. And for full disclosure, Kaz and I are the co-founders of OrthoFi along with Dave Turner and a bunch of other people, and we also have stock in OrthoFi as a full disclosure. But through the system, it's a software system that processes patients through the sales process, and the numbers that we're showing, are robust. Through the years, we processed over almost $2.5 billion of revenue through the system, over 500,000 starts, hundreds of millions of dollars of accounts receivable, with very high collections and insurance rates. So as we go through some of the numbers for this, it's not numbers that we pulled out of thin air. There's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue that's gone through that we've been able to analyze the data from. So for anyone with enough gray hairs that I used to spend most of my time talking about clinical treatment. That's really my passion. I know that I've sort of been talking a lot about business stuff lately, more so because I've gotten access to some of that aggregate data, and I'm really interested in helping orthodontic patients wind up in orthodontic offices. But my real passion was clinical treatment, is clinical treatment still. I still practice seeing clinical patients. In fact, I did so today. And this is one of my patients. One of the big thrills in my life is when Ormco asked me, after doing some of the clinical trials for Insignia, to use some of my patients on the cover of one of their advertising for their Insignia campaigns. And it's a really amazing profession that we have. And I spent the first 10 years of my career exclusively focused on how to become a better clinician, and really all the details that go into both understanding where you should put a smile to how to get there. That was my obsession for 10 years. And I thought in earnest that if I could just become that, a little bit better orthodontist, get that little bit more mesiobuccal cusp where it's supposed to go, or the marginal ridge where it should be, then that's all I needed to do to drive the business results I was looking for too. Because frankly, I didn't just want to be, a great clinician. I also want to have a great business and have great success. And so I really wanted to have all the things that go along with success in professional health career and in the business side of things. And as I began to understand, becoming an incrementally better orthodontist does not incrementally improve your business. In fact, our customers really don't understand most of the things that we care about to make the orthodontic side of business better. So it really wasn't about becoming an incrementally better clinician, although that's what we all need to strive to do. We should be the gold standard. But it's also learning about the business principles that go along with running an excellent business with high integrity at the same time. So it really made me realize that healthcare was changing, the business was becoming more important, in order for the patients to wind up where they should be, which is in the hands of a skilled clinicians, we have to be better at business. You know, things are changing, especially now, right? So we have DTC ortho, big group practices, consolidation is on. We have COVID and all the things that are associated with that, both from a healthcare perspective and a political perspective and an HR perspective. How do we handle all the things that are going on in our practice? How do we manage our team members if they're symptomatic, if they're partially symptomatic? How do we manage all of that? All the political and social things. Buildings literally have been burning over the last months. You know, unemployment, who knows what's going to happen with that? I can't even really tell you what's going on with unemployment at this point. And whatever else is coming down the path that we don't know is out there. And it's enough to make you want to put your head in the sand and kind of forget that things are going on. And wake me up in 2021, which we're almost there, thankfully. Now, on the flip side, you know, from positive news standpoint, Invisalign did the study a few years ago, and what it shows is of the 300 million people in the United States, only 2 to 3 million are treated annually, which means, you know, 74% need treatment, which means that even if we 10x the amount of people in the United States that get orthodontic treatment every year, we multiplied our market times 10, which if you can imagine all of our businesses going by 10 times or 5 times or even double the amount of business that we would have, you know, we could multiply the market by 10 times and still only be treating 10% of the people that could be treated on an annual basis. And Chris Benson is one of the smartest guys out there, shared this data a couple of years ago that the search for the word orthodontics grew 100% year over year from 2016 to 17. So more people, in fact, twice as many people are looking for the word orthodontics in 17 as in 16. And I'm sure once we get some more updated numbers, it continues to grow. So just because there's more competition out there also means, doesn't mean that there's less patients available. In fact, there's more patients available, a lot more patients available. And the question is which way is the pie going to be distributed? And then also some interesting numbers from COVID. You know, the personal savings is at an all-time high. It spiked. You know, there's only so many gummy bears you can buy in quarantine, apparently. The rest of people have been saving. And then, you know, some information that we have from OrthoFi. You know, the blue line shows the V-shaped recovery in patient starts. And so what we're seeing, we talked about the different types of recoveries we could have economically. And I don't know that we're out of the woods yet. You know, we may have a turbulent next few months until, you know, we get to springtime and whatever happens with the vaccine and everything else. But, you know, from a starts perspective, we had a green, or this blue line shows that V-shaped recovery, and we're hoping for a green line of starts performance next year across the data that we're showing. So all is not lost. Although, you know, it seems like lots have been changing. We can make fun of it. What do we do? And so, you know, Darwin said, it's not the strongest species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And I think in turbulent times, now more than any time I can remember, things are changing and we have to be responsive. And I think in our particular circumstance, you know, we have to do both grasping some of the things from a virtual and infection control and a marketing of infection control standpoint, and also grasping the fundamentals of business and understanding, you know, the mindset of a leader and the business fundamentals that are responsible for success. And we got to make sure that, as football players would say, we focus on the blocking and tackling. So you can have the greatest quarterback in the world who can throw the best passes, but unless you have blocking, the quarterback gets tackled before they can get the ball off. And so we need to focus on the fundamentals to move forward. This is a great book, and I'm going to share a lot of books that have been helpful for me over the years, called The 12-Week Year. It's written by a guy named Brian P. Moran. It's actually a Michigan State alum, which the Michigan guy in me doesn't like, but it's a great book, and he's a super sharp guy. And it talks about, it's not what you know or even who you know, it's what you implement that counts. And it teaches you how to do a business plan. Most orthodontists don't know how to do a business plan, what a business plan is, never have done a business plan, and they show up every day thinking about goals that they want, but they don't ever put a plan in place to achieve those goals. You know, the expression, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So this is a great book to kind of start from the business planning. Dave Turner, the CEO of OrthoFi, and I have both used the same business coach over the years. His name is Fadi Baradahi. In fact, Dr. Fadi Baradahi has a PhD in business. I can tell you that both OrthoFi and me personally wouldn't share the same success that we have nearly without Dr. Fadi. So anybody looking for a business coach out there, I have no financial or any other relationship with Dr. Fadi other than gratitude. So he's helped me a lot, and he's a good resource for any of you looking for a business coach. He coaches quite a few orthodontists and many other people in business around the country. So when we get down to the basics, we want to talk about the 3 functions of a business. So if we were in the lecture format, I would ask people what the 3 functions of a business are. And so the first one is what we call operations. So the person in charge of operations in a business is your COO, your Chief Operations Officer. And so what operations are is creation of goods and services that deliver value to the customer. So it's the building of the widget, it's the creating of the consulting information that you use to run your business, or the straightening of the teeth. The second component is marketing. So marketing is the promotion or the selling of those goods and services. So it not only includes the advertising, but it also includes the sales. And then the third component is finance, which is the management and the study of money, because in order to make stuff and to market stuff, you have to sell stuff and get paid, and then you have to manage your money the correct way so that the business keeps in operation and the flywheel spins. And so we know so little about business that if I ask most orthodontists what the 3 functions of a business are, many of us might not get all of these things correct, and this is something that you learn on day 1 of business school. Yet we're all expected to run our small businesses. So when you think about the marketing perspective or how you're going to position yourself out there, there's 4 different ways that you can position your practice from a practice strategy standpoint. So again, if we were raising hands, what is one way that you could position your practice? The first way that typically comes to mind for people is price. So if you have a new competitor come to town, the first thing they may do, the young doctor that opens up in town, they may undercut your price, and they may also, you may be concerned about that. Many of us let the dollars and cents of things get squarely in our head, and we assume that people will only come to us based on the price. And if you're doing a low price, high volume practice, that may in fact be true. But there are other ways that can get your practice to position other than price. The next one is product. So if you ever go to the AAO and you walk into the vendor pavilion, that's how we're marketed to. So we're marketed on by product. So invisible aligners this, self-ligating braces that. We're marketed to mostly from a product perspective. So then a lot of times in our offices, we'll turn around and market back to our consumers the way that we're marketed to from a product perspective. So I do invisible this or braces that. And so that's product marketing. The third thing is niche marketing. So, the small things that you can do to create a little niche for yourself. So maybe you're specialized in surgical orthodontics, or maybe you're sleep apnea or TMJ or extraction or non-extraction, whatever that niche is. You can market yourself inside of a smaller arena that other people don't play in, and you can attract customers in that way. And the fourth way is service. And so customer service, the way you treat your customers, in our case, the way you treat your patients and their parents. And this is the realm that provides the most price elasticity. And so the higher positioning that you have with service, the more you can charge. And there's really 3 different types of service. There's non-compliant service, there's compliance service, and then there's anticipatory service. And so if you think about non-compliant service, we all do this. We know that people would like to get their braces off typically after school, but it's hard to take braces off after school because it's a longer appointment. So we have people come in the morning. So non-compliant service would be like, hi, Johnny's ready to get his braces off, so I'd like to schedule his appointment. Could I get an after school appointment? And the scheduling coordinator says, nope. So that's your non-compliant service. You know what they want, you don't give it to them. Compliance service might be, yep, we do offer that, and let me schedule it at a time of your convenience. And if you figured out how to put all your bondings and debondings in the afternoon and have the rest of your clients happy, then you let me know. I'd love to hear that trick. And the third type of service is anticipatory service. So maybe some of you have been on a tropical vacation before and you've gone down to the Caribbean. We like to do that sometimes with our kids, and we come from Michigan. So we have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to pile our kids onto the car to get to the airport, to connect in Atlanta, to make it somewhere in the Caribbean. And by the time we get there, we are tired, we're hot because we have all of our cold weather clothing on from Michigan. We've been crammed into the plane. And when we get to the hotel, the first thing they do is they take our bags and then they hand you a ice cold adult beverage, which is the best tasting beverage of all time. There's never been a beverage that tastes any better. And they know that's exactly what you need. They're anticipating that. You don't have to ask for it, and they deliver that to you when they know that you need it. So that's anticipatory service. So if you're thinking about really wowing your customers, start to think about how you can anticipate what they need and then provide it to them in advance. Do you wait for them to get coffee, or do you offer it to them? Chocolate chip cookies, are they hot and ready and smelling good when patients arrive in the morning? Or in the afternoon? You know, are there other things that you can do, you know, in your practice that can be nicely anticipated? You know, many offices have massage chairs because they know that parents are stressed. They get very few moments to themselves, but gosh, would it be nice to them to sit down and get a massage where the patients are in the back. So, and one note about price is that I would say, you know, we're not selling gallons of milk in orthodontics. So we're not competing exclusively on price. We also are competing on affordability, and that definitely is the more important component of price, especially when you're selling a high dollar service like orthodontics. So not only are you thinking about price, but I would offer, and we'll back this up with data later, that affordability is a more important aspect of price. So from a customer service standpoint, there's an interesting study by Bain and Company, which is a big consulting group, that 80% of companies say that they deliver superior service. And the actually more interesting part about that is that only 8% of customers agree. So 80% of people say that they give great service, but only 8% of customers agree. Now, most of us in orthodontics don't poll our customers or survey our customers. And so, you know, I think it's worthwhile to look yourself in the mirror and maybe start to have some conversations with your customers about, are you providing the service that you think that you are? Now, this guy, his name is Dan Gilbert, famous guy locally here in Detroit. He started Quicken Loans. He's owns the Cleveland Cavaliers, you know, worth many billions of dollars. Has done a lot to renovate downtown Detroit, and he was interviewed for a blog podcast, and he had this great quote I like. It says, "Numbers and money follow; they do not lead." I tell our team when we're talking about things that money's faster than you, so don't try to catch it. What it basically means is, you know, the old saying, the reason that person has money is because all they care about is money. Maybe it used to be true, unlikely, but it's not true anymore. If all you're doing is caring about money and not your customers, then if you do wind up catching money, you won't have it for very long. And so you need to deliver value to your customers, and you need to give great service to your customers, and the money will follow. If you put money first, then you won't wind up getting it. I think this is a really insightful quote, maybe the most important slide I'll show today. And you know, I think about talking about sales or marketing. I think as doctors, we hate the word sales, we hate the word marketing, and we're, you know, hands off when we talk about marketing or sales. And the first thing that doctors say, well, I'd like to do better at sales, but I hate being pushy. And so, you know, and that's the first thing that I said when I had one of the first people try to help me in our sales process. And I said, well, I don't want to be pushy. And so what this person, a guy named Wayne Pearson, a really bright guy, told me was, you know, elite sales talent means you're not being pushy or high pressure. And so the best salespeople, the ones that have the best results, are the ones that sell the most, but aren't pushy. And so if you hear the word pushy as you're trying to improve your sales process, which you undoubtedly will, because there's a learning curve to it, you're not doing it the right way. And so, in fact, requisite of elite sales talents is to not be pushy and to not be pressured. But you do have to manage to a number. And so Peter Drucker, who is maybe one of the more famous business consultants of all time, so you can't measure or manage what you don't measure. And so you need to take some of the out of what you're doing and apply objective measurement numbers to what you're doing. So you can look at it and you can measure apples to apples from a numbers performance basis. And so as we get into some today and some other lecture stuff next time, we'll dive into some key performance indicators or key numbers that you want to look at and how those can help you understand what's going on in your business and how you can react to those. And so if we think about some of the numbers that you measure from sales performance, the historical measurement, the one we've used for the last 20 years in orthodontics, is called case acceptance. And that's basically the number that starts divided by the number of new patient exams. And while in big data sets over a long range of time, I think this is a directionally accurate number. It's a pretty blunt number, and it really offers you very little information about short-term stuff. So if you make a change in your fee structure, do you know if it's working? If you hire a new TC, how do you know if it's working? If you run a promotion, how do you know if it's working? If you have a new practice where you don't have much recall program, how do you know if it's working? If you have an established practice, you know, are your new patients performing the same as your recall patients? All those things you can't see with this number. So my suggestion is that there's a better number at this point, one that we call treatment recommended conversion, or TRC. So what that is the number of starts divided by the number of recommends. So if I recommend treatment, does the patient start? Yes or no? Case acceptance doesn't take into consideration whether you've actually recommended treatment or not. It's just starts divided by exams. TRC looks at starts divided by recommend. So if I recommend phase 1, did they start? If I recommend new treatment, did they start? If I recommend re-exams, did they start? And then if I didn't recommend treatment, either because they didn't need it or they needed it to go into the recall program and come back later, it doesn't count that against you. So it's a really exact metric that you can measure on an hourly, daily, weekly, monthly basis that tells you exactly what's going on in the sales performance of your business. So it is really the true scoreboard of how you and your treatment coordinators are performing in sales. And so one of the things that orthodontists like is golf, many of us. I am not a good golfer, but I enjoy it from time to time. And when you go to cocktail parties, you know, people start talking about case acceptance. Everyone says they have 80%. You ask, oh, what's your case acceptance? And the answer is 80% or higher all the time. And we know from measuring things in OrthoFi over the year, and over 300 or 400 practices, that most people, when they start, are closer to 50% or below. And even though they say that they're higher, and it reminds me of the same people, the way they play golf with foot wedges and mulligans and do-overs. And so a lot of times when people turn on OrthoFi, they'll complain that it's ruined their case acceptance, when in fact it's actually just made you look at your true case acceptance for the first time without all the mulligans and foot wedges that you've been applying along the way. And so cheating in conversion percentage only hurts you and your bank account. So I would suggest that you start looking at the numbers authentically as soon as possible, and looking at your own conversion percentage. And that's the very first start of how you can improve. So, you know, why, you know, people have been talking about same-day starts for quite a few years now. You know, I'm not sure who started, maybe Dana Fender or Ben Burris or one of those people that you hear talking about it a lot. But whoever it was a sharp person, because, you know, more than being a great sales tool, it's an incredible convenience for our patients. And we know, especially with all the virtual things and, you know, shopping delivery to your door, and the world is, many businesses are making a lot of money and having a lot of happy customers by becoming more convenient. And this is a way that we can be convenient for our customers. You know, if you're going to make them come back 3 or 4 times to have the exam, and then take some models and come back for separators and come back for a consultation, it's wasting an incredible amount of people's time. And, you know, clinical orthodontics is super important to me. If you don't believe that you can do a great job diagnosis and treatment planning without, you know, spending a week or 2 looking at models and tracing steps, I would suggest to become better. It is possible to do it. In fact, many of the country's finest clinicians do mostly same-day starts, and they're able to diagnose and treatment plan their case on the spot. Many of them are also using 3D imaging on every patient, which allows you to get more detailed diagnosis And so, and also just focusing on the patient's time. So convenience is really critical, and to think that you cannot do an appropriate diagnosis the same day for that patient. I think, you know, there's some continuing education that can teach you how to do that. That's outside the scope of this course. And so when we think about, you know, if we define a same day start, when you, patient comes in on the day of the exam, and then you recommend treatment, and then they sign the contract, and then they get their braces on, that's the same day start. And if we look at the conversion percentage for that, your TRC, it's 100%, pretty simple. So the next thing is this, what we call a same day contract. So the patient comes in for the exam, you recommend treatment, they sign the contract, make their down payment, but they don't come back to get their treatment started until later. So this is either someone who signs and comes back later to get their braces on, or an aligner start, or an indirect bond, or whatever those are. And so the conversion percentage for that is just under 99%, right? So the idea that, you know, people kind of run away if they don't get the braces on that day is not true. And so same day starts or same day contract, you know, the signing of the contract and getting the down payment that day is the key part. There are a few that cancel before they get treatment, but not many. So if they don't make their down payment that day, the next thing would be a scheduled start. And so the patient comes in for the exam, you recommend treatment, they don't sign the contract, but they do make the appointment to get the braces on, okay? And the conversion percentage for that is 80%. It drops by 20% by not getting that contract signed. But the smart treatment coordinator, if they're not going to sign the contract that day, would say, okay, well, while you're here, I know you're busy, let's find a convenient time for you to come back and get started with everything so we can put that on the books so you have it. And so that commitment there, as we'll talk about a little bit later, increases the odds that they're going to start, but not as much as getting the contract that day. And then if you come in, you recommend treatment, you don't sign the contract, and you don't schedule that start, they walk out the door, they want to talk to dad, whatever the case may be, the likelihood of the patient starting treatment drops to below 50%. So many of in the process for a treatment coordinator would be, hey, let's get you started. No, I want to go talk to dad. And then they say, okay, great. Talk to dad and then give me a call, right? And so if that's your process, not even offering to get them scheduled, not even offering to get the paperwork out of the way that day and to sign the contract, you know, your conversion percentage is going to be around 50%, which is the way most people do it, which is why the national average is that way. And so if we look at from a demand curve, you know, the vertical axis is conversion percentage, and the horizontal axis is the amount of days from recommend. You can see that the curve drops very steep from when they come in for the exam and to the further out it goes. So, excuse me, the moment they leave the office, your conversion erodes, and then the orange line is adults and the blue line is kids. And the further it goes away from treatment, the less likely they are to start. So it's a very busy world. People have a lot of things on their plate. And so there's a million other things. I think we all ultimately default that if they don't get started in treatment with us, they automatically go to our competitor. But, you know, they also may decide to go to Disney World or get Botox or save the money for college expenses or put the money in the bank or who knows what else they'll do with it. So, but there's a lot of different choices for the consumer's money. And so in order to capitalize on that, the statistics show the sooner we can capitalize on it, the more likely they are to have treatment from us. And hopefully, none of us are recommending treatment for someone who doesn't need it, that we wouldn't treat our own family with. So this isn't a course on how to get anyone to buy orthodontics from you, whether they need it or not. The presumption here that's paramount to all of this is that you're only recommending treatment for people who you would do treatment on your own family for. Okay. But if you're going to do that, you know, the also presumption would be that that treatment is good for the patient, even if they don't understand it, and they should have that treatment. Therefore, we should be good at the sales process. And so if there is a linear and direct correlation between TRC and same day start percentage, the percentage of your starts that are same day starts, and if there is one lever to pull to get your conversion percentage to go up, it's to increase the amount of same-day starts, because we know that the further patients go away from the recommend, the less likely they are to do treatment. Now, we talked about the three parts of business before. There's also three components of a business, separate from the three functions, which are people, process, and technology. So in the second part of this lecture, we're going to talk a lot about process and technologies, the part we talk about in January or February. But the most important part is the people part, the most important function of any business, component of any business. And we're going to spend a good chunk of today talking about people, the way they think, and the way we should be interacting with them. So this man's name is Daniel Handler. You may know him from his pen name, Lemony Snicket. He's written a bunch of books, including a series of unfortunate events, which has made movies and Netflix stuff out of. And he has maybe my favorite quote of all time: "All the secrets of the world are contained within books. Read at your own risk," which is hilariously snarky and sarcastic, but also true. Many of the things we sit around and complain about are all out there in books. All we have to do is read them. But if we do, be careful, because our excuses of not knowing or complaining may go away. And then what? Which I think is very funny, but completely appropriate. So we're going to kind of give you a bibliography of success. I'm definitely not the smartest guy out there, but I am pretty determined. And I love to read or listen to books and learn from other smart people. And it's amazing how much kind of sticks after you force enough information through in between your ears. And so, I think the foundation of a lot of this is characterized in this book, Leadership and Self-Deception, which is a great book. And they talk about a doctor in there, Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, who was an obstetrician in the 1800s in Vienna. And so he was working for a hospital there, and they had basically two clinics. So one clinic, let's call it Clinic A, and one clinic, Clinic B. Now, Clinic A, they measured everything because it was a teaching institution, and Clinic A had 10% maternal mortality rate, which meant 1 out of every 10 moms that went there to have a baby died. Okay, so that's not good. Clinic B had a 4%, 4 out of 100, not 1 out of 10, which is still not good by today's standards, but way better than 1 out of every 10. And so what would happen is that word on the street got out, and these clinics were for the very low income, super low income, homeless, prostitutes. They had no other place to go to deliver their babies. And so word got out that Clinic A, you had a 1 in 10 chance of dying, or if you go to Clinic A, the chance of dying were way higher. So people would go to Clinic B, and Clinic B started overflowing with patients. And so people would actually go have their babies literally in the gutter, and then they'd measure the mortality rate there, and that was lower than Clinic A. And so the mothers of these babies were getting something called childbed fever, which was something that they didn't understand but was killing people. So they tried to figure out what it was. They measured: are they too tall, too short, too fat, too skinny, what religion they were, what color their eyes, any number of things. And one day, Dr. Semmelweis's colleague, one of his best friends, another doctor, was doing an autopsy, and he stuck himself with a scalpel, and he became sick and he died. And when Dr. Semmelweis was doing the autopsy on him, he realized that his friend had the same presentation on autopsy as the dead moms did, with the same childbed fever. And so what had happened is that when the doctors were not delivering babies, they would be doing what good student, it was a teaching hospital, what good student doctors would do, and they'd be working on cadavers, studying them, doing autopsies. And so the difference between the two clinics, Clinic A and B, wasn't one had more fat people or one had more short people, or one was overcrowded or one was undercrowded. The only difference between the two clinics is that Clinic A was where the doctors were working, and Clinic B was where the midwives were working. And so the one variable that was actually increasing the risk of you dying was nothing other than the doctors. See, they were working on the autopsies in one room, and then they'd go into the other room and deliver the babies, and they didn't wash their hands in between, and they would infect the mothers, who would then become sick from the germs from the autopsies, from the dead bodies, and then they would die. And so Dr. Semmelweis is considered the father of modern germ theory because he figured out, after killing many people, including his friend, that he was infecting the women, being the one to kill them. And so the reason I tell this story and the reason it's in the book is, I ask you doctors in your office, all the things that you complain about are the things that the ills of your business, is it possible the cause of them is you? And so I think it's worth looking in the mirror at the very first and realizing, the employees that I am complaining about and that I'm blaming for the issues that I have in my business, who hired them, and the bottleneck that happens in the clinic, or being on the phone or on the internet when you could be out there treating patients, or the efficiencies in your office. And those boil down to who? And I think if you really look in the mirror, the answer is typically us. And so I think that's the foundation of everything we need to do to think about how to make our practices better, is to realize what it is that we contribute. So many times when Kaz and I give these lectures, it's in a room full of people, and there's a lot of team members that come and watch us. And when we talk about this, hey, doctor, pay attention part, all the team members are looking at each other and they're nodding and kind of smiling like, yeah, my doctor does that. And they do a bunch of dumb stuff. And if they just listen to me, then life would be better. But not so fast, team members. You guys do a bunch of stuff that could be helped out too. So this is another great book by Cy Wakeman called Reality-Based Leadership. And she talks about drama in the workplace. And I thought this, part was really appropriate for us. She talks about 3 different ways that you could sort of interpret things that happen. One is the victim. And so, well, it's not my fault. I know that I showed up late for my interview and I smell like I took a big bong rip in my car because I did, but it's not my fault that they didn't hire me because they didn't know what they were talking about. And I don't know about you guys, but that seems like half the people that I interview anymore for positions are like that. The second is the villain. It's not only it's not my fault, but it's your fault. If my office manager wasn't so mean, then I wouldn't show up to work late every day, 30 minutes, right? And so, or traffic, or any number of reasons why you're late. It's always somebody else's fault, and it's this particular person's fault. And then it's helpless. There's nothing I can do. It's Corona or whatever else is the reason why things are bad. And so any number of these things you can put blame on, or you can convince yourself that is the reason for things that are going wrong. But one strong look in the mirror is really all that you need to do to peel back some of the layers and realize that all of us have things that we can work on. And so the one thing we should be thinking about in our businesses is, how do I deliver value for my customers and my team, both today and in the future? So, if you're thinking there, if you're a team member and you're thinking, I think the normal mindset is that, the way that I make more money is to keep my butt in the same chair as it revolves around the sun one time. And so 1 year from now, if I'm sitting in the same chair, then I deserve a raise, right? And so that's not giving more value to your customer. That's, loyalty, if nothing else, which is a component of value, but not a driver of value. And so, we need to be thinking about, how do I deliver more value for my customers and my team today and the future? And then that's where values drive, both for the team members. That's how you get ahead in the office, and for the doctors. That's how you drive growth in your business. Gary Vaynerchuk, a really bright guy. He's got a great podcast. If you turn on your car, don't do it with the kids on unless you have the earmuffs. There's lots of F-bombs in there. But he says, amongst a lot of smart things, when you know who you are, everything changes. And, the biggest gift that you can give yourself is the gift of an accurate self-perception. Because again, when you know who you are, everything changes. And, temet nosce in Latin means know thyself. And it's a good word to write in Sharpie on your mirror so you look at it every day and try to make sure that, do you understand who you are that day and every day? Because, when you know where you're starting, then you know which direction that you can go. So shifting gears here, what's the most important business process? This is a great book by Dale Doughton called Great Employees Only. And he'll say that which I agree with, the most important business process is the acquisition, development, and retention of talent. So you bring on great people, you don't train them, you develop them. and then you retain them. And that's how great businesses move forward. And so one of the things he talks about, which I think is really smart, is the concept of reactive versus proactive hiring. So if we, again, if we raise hands in the audience and we say, okay, do you think that you hire more reactively or proactively? I think most of us hire reactively. So we wait until you need a new team member with white hot urgency. 3 people have gotten pregnant and one person moved, his husband moved out of town, and now you are down and it's about to be summertime. And so you're mad scramble to hire somebody extra, right? And then, the one thing on someone's resume that you look for when you're hiring in a pinch is the word experience, right? And so you're looking for someone experienced to come in so you don't have to train them so that they can get up to speed quickly. But then, I don't know about where you are, but where I am, there's not just all these awesome team members with experience that are walking around on the street just waiting for you to offer them a job. Normally the good team members who have experience, they don't leave their job because they're valuable and the other doctors keep them there. So then most of the time you get, at the very best, mediocre team members if you're hiring locally from experience. Now, once in a while you get lucky and somebody moves into your town and they're looking for a job, but most of the time you wind up getting a very average or to below average team member. And then when you ask them to change and do same day starts or do some other things, then they just don't have the capability to do it because you haven't done a good job acquiring that talent. Versus proactively, you can reach out, you can hire someone, that's extra that you can train and develop. And so then when you need the person or when you need someone to step in to do a same day start, or when your office gets busy in the afternoon, they can jump in there and then you can maintain your great customer service. So I think the difference between mediocre and great teams are those ones that both hire proactively versus reactively, and they staff to the level of where they want to be, not to what level of where they are. They staff to their growth. And so you should have a little bit of a bench on your team, and you should constantly be training and developing people so that the cupboard isn't bare, because your team is your best asset. And that's the way that you grow and continue to provide excellent customer service. So how do you develop your team? This is a great book by Captain David Marquet. He was a captain of the U.S. Navy nuclear submarine, the USS Santa Fe. And so this was the least performing ship in the nuclear submarine in the Navy. And he came in and he literally turned the ship around to the best performing ship, and then wrote a book about how he did it. And so what he talks about is developing what he calls the leader-leader model. Now, military is typically leader-follower. So, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir, I'm the boss and you're the follower. So I tell you and then you do, which is very similar to how we're trained as doctors. Yes, doctor, whatever you say, doctor. And so whatever the attending or the senior doctor says, then the younger one does it. Yes, sir, no, sir. And then we turn around, and that's how we've been trained. So that's how we train the people that work with us. And so we say jump and we expect them to say how high. And what you wind up is to get a bunch of mindless people that are working for you. And so, Forbes has a quote of the day, and I think this is appropriate here. If you delegate tasks, you'll raise up doers. If you delegate authority, you'll raise up leaders. And the purpose of this book was to talk about the leader-leader model. And so he wanted to not lead people by direction. He wanted to create leadership by intention. So instead of saying, Captain, permission to submerge the ship, he wanted his team members to come to him and say, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. And so at the beginning, he would have to teach them, what the appropriate things were in order to submerge the ship. So check the gauges, make sure there wasn't any whales that were underneath the ship or whatever is necessary. But once they had that knowledge, he would expect them to lead by intention. And so, what that does is that creates psychological ownership. So the person has to think about what it is they want to do, communicate their desire to do that. And so they then create a psychological ownership of that idea, which makes them more likely to follow through. So if you think about how to manage that in an orthodontic office, do you think it's possible to develop your team that works chair side so that you can teach them the things that are necessary to understand when you're putting in a 1425 wire per se. So instead of coming over, looking at the patient, and the 1425 wires are supposed to go in that day, they're sitting there on the chairside table. The assistant is waiting for you to tell them what to do. And you come over and you say, yep, put in the 1425 wires and chain the upper to the 2, and we'll see him back in 8 weeks, right? Versus if you teach the team members how to do it, do you think it's possible to come over and instead of waiting to be told, you know, because most of us will say next time put in 1425 wires or new wires, is it possible to train them so that they know what wires should go in, 1425s? If they see space upper 2 to 2, they know to chain it. They can check the elastics, and do they need to continue them or should they reduce them just tonight? And most of the time we do another 8-week increment. So can they already have scheduled the next 8-week increment? So by the time you get over there, they can tell you, doctor, I intend to do this. We need to keep these elastics. We're going to do these chains. And you can say, very well, and move on. And then everything's already done while they've been waiting for you. And that psychological ownership has been proven to build happier, more capable team members. And that's the focus of the book. And rather than having, you know, one person with one big idea, what's more powerful? One person or, you know, tens or hundreds of people thinking together, working towards solving a challenge or creating something new. And so, you know, obviously more heads are better than none. Now, this isn't an excuse for you to hand off all of your authority or your management to everybody else. But there's a great concept called the 10-80-10 rule. And so what it means is that a leader can be involved in the first 10%, and then 80% of the bulk of the project can be done by someone else, and then another 10% at the end can be done by the manager following up. So I'll give you an example. We went to visit Kaz's office with our team, and one of my team members saw the sterilization procedures they had, and he's all steam, autoclave, cassette-based sterilization, you know, state-of-the-art stuff, and we didn't. This is maybe 10 years ago, and my team member says, hey, we really need to do that. And I agreed with her, but I just didn't have time to like get into looking into researching it all and doing whatever. So I said, okay, if you want to do this, let's sit down and put together, you know, all the things that we need, what the budget would be and what it would take. And then we can talk about it. So we sort of game planned from the beginning, and then she went back, and I was getting text messages on Friday night about what instruments we need to buy and how she just saved us $2 a plier here and there. And she did an incredible amount of work putting it together. And then we met at the end for the last 10% to get everything finalized. And she launched the entire product, the new sterilization system herself, and helped me get buy-in with all the team. And it never would have gone anywhere near that smoothly if I had tried to do it on my own. And by empowering your teammates, not only do you free up time for you to do other things, but you give psychological ownership in a project so that they feel compelled to help make it succeed just as much as you do, or more, since they're the one doing most of the work, and it leads to better performance in the office. Another great book by Ed Catmull, who's the founder of Pixar, tells a story about the genesis of Pixar and working for George Lucas in the industrial light magic filmmaking business, and the Return of the Jedi, all the way through Steve Jobs becoming involved in the company and selling to Disney, and then working on Disney animation, kind of revitalizing it. It's a great book. And he tells a story about this particular code, /BIN/RM-R-F*. And so back in the day, each file that they were working on was in a folder, and each little scene, as they stitched them together into animation, they would have these huge files with all these individual little frames in them. And so this code in particular was if they decided to scrap like a particular bucket of files that may have thousands or tens of thousands of files in it, you could type this code in. So one day, you know, they're working on Toy Story 2, and it's getting towards the end. There's a few months left before they, before it goes to, you know, to launch into the films. And as they're working on it, animating it, all of a sudden, some of the frames start to disappear, and Woody disappears. And then a few minutes later, you know, Buzz is gone from some of the things, and then Mr. Potato Head is gone. And what had happened was someone had typed in that code into the mainframe of the computer, and it was deleting the entirety of the movie. And so they realized it was happening. They ran around. It was back in the day when they had a big mainframe computer. And so they literally went to pull the plug on the mainframe computer once they realized it was happening, but it was too late. And the vast majority of the movie was either corrupted or gone. And so what did they do at that point? Well, they called a big meeting and they tried to invite everyone in, and they said, okay, well, how are we going to solve for this? And one of the ladies who was working there in the Pixar headquarters had just gotten back from maternity leave. And while she was home, after she had her baby, she was working from home, and they had actually set up, this isn't the day like today with the internet, but they'd actually set up a mainframe computer in her house because she was important enough so she could work from home then, and it would upload the entirety of the data files into her computer on a daily basis. And so, you know, it hadn't communicated back with the main hub yet, so it didn't know to delete everything. So they ran over there and they looked on the computer, and the computer actually had all of the files. And so they brought it back to the Pixar headquarters, and Ed Catmull tells the story of them carrying the computer into the headquarters like an Egyptian pharaoh, and they were able to restore the movie and make their deadline, and all was fine. But the question becomes, you know, what happens, you know, what did the management do when they realized such a colossal error had happened? You know, well, they got they restored the film first, you know, make sure the backup, they did have a tape backup, but they hadn't checked it in a while, and that was corrupted too. So they made sure there was no way for the backup not to happen again. And then they made it much more difficult to delete something. So they got rid of that code and made a bunch more layers to make sure you couldn't just accidentally delete everything. What they did not do, you know, and if you think about it, what would your reaction? What they did not do is do an immediate witch hunt to find the person that typed in that code, right? Because Catmull was a smart enough leader that he knew that if he was going to empower his team, that was the only way he was going to get amazing things, is to empower the team and bring out the creativity and the desire and the determination of each individual person to create something great. And you can't do that if there's a huge fear of repercussion. If you make a mistake, it's just impossible to have a leader model if everyone's afraid if they make a mistake. And so 100% of people are capable of making mistakes, and 100% of people are also capable of being recognizing your mistake when you make it. And so if you get everyone working together as one unit, as one team with one singular vision, you can create something great. And that doesn't happen if your first reaction to failure or mistake making is punishment. This is one of my favorite pictures or memes of all times. You know, even great companies make mistakes along the way, and empowering your team requires managing some challenging times when, you know, it's one thing when we make a mistake and we expect our team to be there for us, and it's another as leaders to watch as other team members make mistakes and watch them learn and grow and help them overcome them and rise up to learn to not do it in the future. Gary Vaynerchuk also says the quickest way to tell someone is a loser is hear them cast blame. Blaming is for losers. And I think that's a really powerful statement. If you think about it in our lives, how many things are blamed, how many victims or villains or helpless people are there. And what it boils down to is that if blaming is a big part of your life, success won't be. And think about that and hear yourself when you're blaming other people for things. Then realize that that's the last thing that will get you to be more successful. If I'm unhappy with the performance of my team, it's my fault. And so if we start with that leadership and self-deception, temet nosce, and understand how we need to think about things to go forward in the future, it really starts with understanding both where we are in performance and then realizing how to build a team and build them up rather than break them down. So if we shift gears into sales theory, you know, one of the things I think we're taught to sell on is expertise when we really need to learn to sell on trust and value. So if we think about, this is a good book, Creating Trust in an Understandably Untrusting World. We had a doctor here in Detroit that was prescribing chemotherapy for cancer to patients who didn't have cancer so that he could make money. And they found out that he actually killed 2 people who didn't have cancer by prescribing so much chemotherapy to them, and they died. So he's in jail now, and may he rot there. But, you know, this is a doctor, and we all have sketchy doctors in our neighborhood, regardless of what area of medicine or dentistry they practice in, and their sketchiness rubs off on us. And so we have to understand that and not really blame our patients for the fact they don't trust us, understand they don't trust us, and help learn how we can build trust when they should be skeptical. So some of the things we think about is expertise is assumed. So many of us, the things that they have on the wall is their diplomas. You know, I went here, I went there, and I went to this study club in 1987 with this oral surgeon. I did this or that, and so plaques and plaques and plaques. And we're not out there like the pizza store spinning the arrow trying to get people in or hustling on the street to bring them in. They're coming to us. They know that we're doctors. And so for most part, the expertise is assumed, but the trust isn't. So maybe, you know, putting your own patients on your wall versus your diploma so they can see your work and so they can realize the beautiful smiles that you have created personally is maybe a better way to transfer trust than your diploma. You need to become an excellent orthodontist. So, you know, everyone in your office, including your TC, knows if you're good at what you do or not. And so until you become good, or if you're using cheap stuff or whatever, the people in your office know it, and that will transfer into your sales process. So first and foremost, become a great orthodontist, and give guys like Stu Frost and Trevor Nichols a call and take some of their courses. You know, if you haven't, and really, you know, perfect your craft. Always tell the truth, no matter what. And so the truth is one thing that's easy to retell. So if you have people come in multiple times, if they, you know, we all have the ones they come in and you tell them something and you come back and they want to hear what you had to say again, and you know, telling them the truth no matter what is the most important thing. Never try to sell something to them that they don't need or that you wouldn't do for your own child. And you have to be consistent. So one time if you come in, you tell them you should take teeth out, and the next time they come in, you tell them you don't need to take teeth out, or an expander and don't need an expander. You're really going to confuse both your team and your prospective customers. So try to be consistent in your recommendations. And again, don't ever sell anything you don't believe is honest or best in category. So the moment that you know, your treatment coordinators and your team members are smart, so they know after they've worked with you for a little while which patients should be in recommended treatment and which ones shouldn't. And if you ever start, you know, recommending things just to try to get them to start same day or otherwise, your team's going to realize it. They're not going to trust you that you're doing what's right for the patients anymore, and that's going to bleed into your success. And so regardless of anything, and I know we're talking about sales here, but sales doesn't mean selling people stuff they don't need. It's how to help them understand how to get something they do. So never recommend anything that they don't need. Reviews, you know, it's kind of yesterday's news, but the idea of social interaction and social proof, as we're talking about in a little bit, putting people on recall when they're there to buy and they're ready to buy, but you tell them, hey, now's not the right time, that builds trust rather than recommending to people even though that you know will buy from you, even though they might not be ready or it might not be the time you would start your own child. And then at least be above average with your fees. So, you know, we talked about competing on price. And, you know, if you think about wine, if I were to tell you a bottle is worth $80, or a bottle, in fact, they have lots of studies, you know, they compare a $100 bottle of wine to a $20 bottle of wine, and they do the Pepsi challenge. So they'll take the $100 bottle and they'll tell people it's a $20 bottle, and they'll take the 20 and tell them it's 100. And 80% of the people pick the $100 wine as tasting better all the time, regardless of which wine it is, the cheap one or the expensive one, because people think expensive is better. And so, you know, if you feel like you're mediocre with your fees and you should charge higher, then do, and we'll probably increase the amount of business people do with you. Never ever lower your fees to make a deal. So if you say, well, my fee is $6,000, and they say, well, Dr. Jones up the street could do it for $5,000, you say, oh, okay, $5,000 it is. You know, you effectively just told the patient that you were lying to them, that your service was worth $6,000, but it's actually worth $5,000. But, you know, good for them for being a good negotiator. You caught me. I really was am worth $5,000, but I was going to charge you $6,000, and that ruins your trust both with your TC and your customer, and they tell everyone in your community, hey, just tell them that you could get it for less, and then they'll charge you less. It's terrible for business. Never ever lower your fees to make a deal. Keep your price integrity. So deal making, fee reductions damage trust, because there's always someone who will do it cheaper. Excuse me. So many of you have probably seen this, but it's always a good one. So great book by Robert Cialdini. There is a YouTube video that you can watch on this of all the books that I've read or listened to. This one's pretty dry. So if this information doesn't do it for you, watch the YouTube video before you try to read the book. But, you know, he talks about influence, and he begins the story with talking about turkeys. So, you know, the idea, click whir. So what does he mean by that? So he studies these wild turkeys, and, you know, he would study the turkey, the mama turkey with the baby turkeys. And, you know, the turkeys, the baby turkeys would make this cheep, cheep, cheep sound, and the mom would go over and feed the baby turkey. Now, the natural predator for the baby turkey is the polecat. So naturally, mama turkeys hate the polecat. So if a mama turkey sees the polecat, the immediate chasing and pecking and running off in a frenzy of feathers, trying to chase the polecat away so the polecat doesn't eat the baby turkeys. And so they did this experiment where they took a taxidermy polecat, and they put a dead one, and they put it near the mama turkey, and the mama turkey went and pecked the polecat and feathers and polecat fur and everything. And so then they did a tape recording of the baby turkeys when they were cheeping, when they were hungry, and they put that inside of the taxidermied polecat, and they put it back over by the mama turkey and turned on the cheep, cheep, cheep sound. And guess what happened? The mama turkey went over and tried to feed the polecat, right? So there was this click whir, and they had something happened, and it totally changed the behavior of the mama turkey. She heard the cheep, cheep, cheeping, and she fed the polecat, even though her natural instinct would be to tear the thing to shreds. And so what Cialdini postulates is, hey, are there things in human beings that behave the same way, where, you know, click whir would happen, and then it would influence their behavior. And so that's the premise of the book. And when he found that there was 6 what he called weapons of influence that you could use for good or for bad. So these are things that if you're being unscrupulous with your sales, you could help sell iced Eskimos, as the expression goes. But if you're selling with integrity, there are also things you should understand, so that you can strategize them to your advantage to help understand, you know, how you might be more persuasive in your sales process. So the first one is commitment. Once establishing an initial position, people are more likely to take a position consistent with that commitment. So they did a study of insurance salespeople. So in New York, in order to sell insurance to someone, you have to meet in person. But the way they would drum up leads is they would cold call them. So they call you on your phone, and you would answer, and then they would try to sell you insurance. And what they realized is, you know, if you said, yeah, I'll sell insurance, they'd have to meet you and then consummate the insurance sale in person. But there was a huge degree of attrition, people that would say, hey, I'll do it. But then they wouldn't show up and actually do it. So they tried a bunch of different techniques, and there was one question that was more effective than all of them. And so once they got them to say yes to buying insurance, they would ask this question. They would say, okay, you know, can you tell me, you know, what one thing about my sales presentation was the thing that made you decide to do the insurance? And it didn't matter what they said. It could say price. It could say that, you know, your voice was charming. It could have been anything. The response was irrelevant. It's just they picked something. They made a commitment to, this is the reason why. And if they made some commitment one way or the other, they were 19% more likely to show up and sign the insurance coverage. 19%. You know, so you think in the orthodontic office, you know, as you're talking with patients, you know, if I had a magic wand, is there one thing that you would like me to fix? And it doesn't really matter what they say. Having them commit that they want you to fix something. Statistics in this influence studies show that the patient will be more likely to do business with you just by asking that question. And that's has nothing to do with slippery, slimy, pushy sales tactics. It's just someone committing to doing something they want raises the chances that they'll actually do that. You know, it's interesting. So reciprocity, a person will try to repay in kind what another person has provided. So it's the holiday season. Think about if you're going to visit your friend or to a holiday party and someone surprises you and they've gotten you a gift for the holidays and you've gotten them nothing. So if you can imagine that situation, how uncomfortable it is, you get that feeling in your stomach. That's reciprocity in action. So you want to repay them something even though you haven't given them something. And so, you know, if you think about your new patient process, you know, do you give them a t-shirt? You know, and do you give them the t-shirt after they start or before they start? How much would it cost you to give everyone ahead of time a t-shirt rather than wait until after they start? You know, Cialdini would suggest that the patient would be more likely to want to repay you back in kind with their business with reciprocity. Do you offer them coffee? You know, we go ahead and offer them coffee in a coffee mug that we'll let them keep if they want to, rather than the little, you know, disposable coffee cup. And so, and we do that for a reason. We do that to inspire reciprocity in the person, plus they're carrying our mug around when they drink their coffee. So there's a lot of ways you can think about this in your business. You know, we like people who are like us or more likely to say yes to their requests. So similarity. So some of the people that it's easy for, you're very similar physically to the people in your community. Other people may live in a community where you're pretty dissimilar to the major parts of the community. But, you know, one of the things you can do is try to find that similarity in your discussion. You know, talk to them, find out what it is that they like. Hey, you play baseball? My son likes baseball, or I like baseball when I was a kid, or I like this or like that, and try to find something that you have in common. And principles of influence would say identifying that commonality or that similarity would make people more likely to do business with you. Authority, strong societal pressures to comply with the requests of authority figures. We, you know, as doctors, we kind of have that already. Some people play to that by putting the white coat on, which is just a symbol of authority. Hey, I'm the doctor, you're not. We go for more of the similarity concepts in our office. In fact, this is what I wear. I wore to work to see patients today. And so we're going for more of a low-key vibe than the strong authority vibe. I know other doctors who wear the white coats and the ties that are successful with that too. That's just not me. So this is more authentic, but you can do what you were. Sort of the landmark study on authority is in the 60s at Yale by Stanley Milgram, when they're trying to figure out how, you know, Nazi Germany was able to create the Holocaust and get some of these soldiers to do some of the atrocities in the Holocaust. And basically the study was, you know, there were two components of the study. The first one was the person they were studying, and the second one was supposedly another person in the study, but was actually an actor. And so the actor was going to be told a list of words that they would have to remember. And if they didn't remember them, the person in the study was the one who was being studied, was supposed to deliver an electric shock, zap them. And so in theory, the study was to see how electric shocks stimulate memory, but it actually was to study if a figure of authority, a doctor with a clipboard there, was telling them to shock the patient, how many shocks would they give them in a row? And each time they missed it, the shock would go up by 15 volts. So they would take them all the way up to 450 volts and 400 increment shocks, and to see how many people would do it. And after, you know, halfway through the shocks, the actor patient would start yelling, saying that their chest was hurting, please stop, please stop, please stop. And ultimately they would become unresponsive if this person kept delivering the shocks after 300 and some volts. And so the question was, how many people made it all the way up to the 450 volts and continuing shocking the unresponsive patient? Because the doctor, when the person objected to shocking them, would say, no, you must continue. Yes, sir, you agreed to the study, you must continue. And then I demand that you continue as part of the study. So the study would stop one of two ways. They deliver all the shocks at 450 volts, or they would resist the doctor or authority 3 times. They would tell them no, and then the study would stop. So how many people went all the way up to the 450 volts, shocking an unresponsive patient? 65% of the people in the study. So a crazy amount of people would do that, which shows the impact of authority. Now, it's obviously not the way we want to, use that as doctors or as an orthodontist, but it's important to understand what a powerful thing authority is. And there's a company out there, Advantage Media, Forbes Books, which I have no financial relationship, but I talk about a lot, and I love what they do. And there's a whole concept of authority marketing that you can play into as a doctor by writing a book and doing some other things that we'll talk about later. But it's really important to understand this concept of authority. Excuse me. So scarcity, people align more value, things they perceive as less available. So think about, rare cars or watches. And this concept is super utilized in retail. So if you think about any kind of sale that you have in retail, there's always an end date. So when the sale is going to end, it's going to end on that day, and when that day the sale ends. So if you are going to do any kind of sales promotions in your office where you offer something, whether it be a reduction in fee or some sort of bonus for starting, you need to have that concept of scarcity, because if they don't start by such and such day, then it goes away, which is a powerful, influential thing. And then social proof. People decide how to act or what to believe based on what other people are doing. And the internet and reviews and YouTube and TikTok and all the other crazy things that people will do based on what others are doing have proved that. And so in the internet age, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that reviews and whatnot, blogs and things like that are many times more important than what the doctor has to say. So we need to make sure our online reputation is stellar and that people are saying good things about us, which boils down to customer service. So to dive a little deeper into sales theory, Daniel Pink has a great book called To Sell is Human, and he talks about the death of a salesman, and your traditional salesman, the encyclopedia. Maybe some of us are old enough to remember the door-to-door encyclopedia salesman or whatever else, and how that doesn't really exist anymore. And basically that we're all in sales anymore. And there's two types of selling. There's traditional sales, and then there's non-sales selling. So traditional sales, if we think about that, would be our reps that come into our office to try to sell us stuff, or car salesmen or whomever. And non-sales selling is us. So whether you're a cardiologist or an orthodontist, or you sell carpet or whatever, you have to convince your prospective customer why to do business with them, whether it be the healthcare service you're providing or paying you for it, or both. And so when we think about sales and marketing, we kind of think about them as dirty words, but really the way that I define marketing is just the message that you put out about your business and why it's important. So it comes down to basically everything that you do in your business is marketing. Where your office is located, what your team looks like, what they dress like, what your office smells like, what music you're playing, what type of technology you're using, the appearance of your office. Does it appear sterile? Does it appear fun? Any number of things that go involved in not just what ads you put on Google or what your Facebook page looks like, or what teams you sponsor. Every little detail about what you do is the message you're putting out in the business and why it's important. And then sales is just the process of taking a prospective customer and converting them into customer. That's it. There's nothing deceptive or disingenuous about it. It's somebody that wants to do business with you, and now they do business with you. And then TRC, the treatment recommended conversion, is just your scoreboard. It's the measurement of how effective your marketing is. If you have ineffective marketing, then your sales process will suffer. If you have good marketing, then your sales process will be stronger. And the TRC is the scoreboard that you look at to tell how you're doing. And that's all that it is. And so I think sort of demystifying those two things and understanding what they are, and looking at its basic form, if you're recommending treatment to somebody, do they say yes or do they not say yes? And, if you're recommending treatment to somebody, the presumption would be that that treatment will be good for them. And so saying yes to your recommendation would be good for the patient, even though they may not understand why their overbite that doesn't look like a big deal to them is important. Your marketing process is part of what drives the patient to understand why they should do business with you and why they should pay you for your services. Many of us, I'm not, but many people might be listening, are and I've been doing this 20 years, are old enough where there was a time, yes, doctor, whatever you say, doctor. Occasionally we get people who come directly from other countries, and there's still that layer of respect for doctors where it's yes, doctor, whatever you say. But in the United States, most people who read Mommy Blog yesterday think they know more about what's going on in your office than you do, or they watch a YouTube video or whatever. And the respect layer for doctor just isn't there. So if you want to prescribe 4 buys out and a headgear, you're going to hear them peeling out of your parking lot, and they're going to be on Google finding a second opinion before their rubber marks hit your parking lot. Now, it used to be in the era of what, yes, doctor, whatever you say, doctor. The reason for that being was what Daniel Pink calls information asymmetry. And so the doctor had all the information and the patient had none, or the car salesman had all the information and the prospective client had none. And so a Latin saying, caveat emptor, means buyer beware. The reason that came about is because, the salesperson had all the info, and the client, the prospective customer, had no way to get the information. So if you recommended 4 bicuspids and a headgear, they would say, yes, doctor, whatever you say, doctor, because they had really no other alternatives. And a real shift now is with information parity with the advent of the internet. So now it's more of caveat venditor, which is seller beware. If you provide services or things that are either disingenuous, untrustworthy, or not what the patient would want, you better beware, because they're going to, post really negative things about you, say really bad things about you. And they can find out quickly information that used to be only available to the doctors. So information is much more a level playing field. And he tells a story about, if you think about what the salesiest of salespeople is, you think used cars. And he tells a story about the most successful used car dealership in North America is on the Eastern Seaboard. And in their lobby, they have a big, huge bank of computers with Carfax, the website up there. And all the used cars that they have on their lot, they give you the VIN number when you look at it, and you just go in and punch it into the Carfax website, which isn't run by them, right in their waiting room. It basically says, hey, we're telling you the truth, and if you don't believe me, here, go check on this car, and you'll see what we're saying is the truth. And so the concept of that, made their business go boom, and they're the most successful car dealership in North America. So I think there's something to be said about how we educate our patients. And so again, one of the reasons maybe to write our book is that if the patient reads that, then they're consuming information that they don't directly associate with you, and then that sort of sculpts their thinking into thinking the way that you do. And then they can help them drive their decision-making through this information parity concept. And so, the ABCs of selling before used to always be closing. And Daniel Pink suggests that they're now attunement, buoyancy, and clarity. They are the new ABCs of selling. And so, as we wind down here, let's just talk briefly about those. So this is a little exercise we do in the in-person lectures. So if you imagine that you have a partner, if you're listening with somebody else, partner up, and one person is the watcher and the other person is the doer. And so what I want you to do is imagine drawing a capital E on your forehead. So take your finger and draw a capital E. Like if you have a partner, or pretend you have a partner, draw the E on your forehead. Okay, and then if when you think about the way that you draw that E, and so if you haven't taken the time to draw it, bear with me, do the little exercise, draw an E on your forehead. And then did you draw the E so that you could read it internally in your mind's eye? Or did you draw it so that the person, your partner, could read it? Which way did you draw the E, right? And so that concept, the E test of how you drew it, is called attunement, the ability to step outside your own experience and imagine emotions, perceptions, and motivations of another. So many of us in orthodontics are good at drawing the E the way that the person would read it, because maybe we sit at the TC room knee to knee and we do it back and forth. But that concept of understanding what it's like to be somebody else is what he calls attunement, kind of tuning into the person's wavelength. Apple, I'm giving this presentation on an Apple computer right now, and if I pull the lid down and look at the top of the computer, the apple for me is upside down. So when I'm looking at the apple as the user, I'm looking at it upside down. But Steve Jobs is smart enough to realize that from a marketing perspective, it'd be better off with me looking at the apple upside down, somebody who's already bought an apple. And when you're in the coffee shop, everyone else is looking at the computer, seeing the apple the way that they want to see it, which would be upside down if he made it the way that I wanted to see it as the user. And so that concept of attunement is all the way up to companies like Apple. So I think it's worthwhile paying attention. And so when we talk about WIIFM, everyone's favorite radio station, what's in it for me radio. And that's what everyone's listening to. And whether we like it or not, at a basal level, people really only care what's in it for them. Whether they put on that they do that way or not, it's just the truth. So if you imagine people have little antennas like you used to on the TV, the old TVs with antennas before cable, and you constantly have to tune those antennas in. You need to do that with your prospective clients. You need to continually tune into their radio station and give them enough information, and you need to communicate with them in a bunch of different ways, because they're going to constantly be going out of tune because they're listening to a bunch of different things all at once. And you need to consistently tune their antenna so that their your station, what's in it for doctor's office station, and what's in it for them is playing on the same wavelength, so that they start to understand what's in it for them to do business with you. You're attuning yourself to them. And so here's a little exercise. And, I have a kid in the first grade now. And if you think about, first person, second person, and third person. Now, do this little first person exercise for yourself. Pull out your, any number of the written communications that you give to your customers. Whether it's welcome to the office, your website, whatever it is. And then look at how many of the pronouns in your communication are written in the first person. Our office does this, I do this, we're a diamond provider of that, I'm really good at this. And so, I would challenge you that first person communication is really ineffective today, because even more so now than ever, because people really only care about themselves. So go through and count what percentage of your communication is in the first person, which is what is in the second person, talking about the word you. And so you should be about 75% or more second person versus first person. And I would bet your communication is the exact opposite of that. So I would challenge you to go through your correspondence and make it so that the only time you use a first person pronoun is when it is in the process of communicating a benefit to the patient. For example, we understand that you're very busy, so we've saved time for you in our schedule to be convenient. We know your time is important to you, and we've made our schedule flexible for your convenience. Those are the only time that you should be using we when it directly talks about the benefit to them in the second person. And so look at that, and then you should be sculpting your conversations that way in the treatment coordinator room too. Less about you and more about what your services can do to benefit them, getting on their wavelength from an attunement. Buoyancy is the proper balance between downward and upward forces. So maybe you're old enough to remember Stuart Smalley on Saturday Night Live. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. Optimism, and like it or not, especially with social media and bullying, there's all kinds of pessimism, not good enough, not smart enough, and there's plenty of people that we deal with on a daily basis that are dealing with this. Then there's the realism, which is one of my favorite slides. And so there's attributional style questionnaire, which measures another insurance company did a test on how optimistic or pessimistic you were. And they found that if you scored on the optimistic half, you're 37% more insurance sales. You would perform 30% higher than the people who scored in the pessimistic half. And then if you scored in the top 10% of optimistic, you would sell 88% more insurance than the bottom 10%. pessimistic. So, you know, in baseball, they'll call it a hitter's mentality. You know, this guy's Miguel Cabrera, who at least a few years ago was the best hitter in all of baseball. And his batting average is, you know, he would get a hit maybe 1 out of every 3 times he would try, 333 batting average. But 2 out of every 3 times he'd try to get hit, he wouldn't. And he's the best hitter on the planet. And I can guarantee you that every time he stepped up to plate, he wasn't thinking about the 2 out of 3 times he wasn't going to get a hit. He was sure he was going to get a hit every single time up to plate. And that's what made him the best. And so if you're thinking about, you know, your competition down the street, how they're more expensive, or how you're more expensive than them, or any other reason about why you're not going to be the one that they choose, that's exactly what's going to happen, you know. And that all starts with becoming a great orthodontist. And when you know, and then the second would be, you know, acquisition and development of a really great team, so that when you know, then the patient will be better served by seeing you than anyone else. You can be optimistic about that. And so you think about the way that your self-fulfilling prophecy and your self-talk works in your office and how important that is, and to be, you know, the optimism which drives your sales issues. And your failures are temporary because, you know, each time that you bring a patient in your office, understand that what you recommend is the best thing for them and you're the best place for them to go. And that's going to influence your sales process. And then clarity, we must be clear in identifying both the problems and the solutions. So one of the things that we're not good at in orthodontics is we're not good at being clear. We love to confuse our prospective clients. So we'll start talking in a bunch of dental lingo that they don't understand about the mesiobuccal cusp and class 2 this and overjet that. And we'll pull out the Panorex, which is really easy for us to see, but might as well be written in Martian for our patients. And we start drawing and doing this, and we confuse the heck out of them. You know, when most of the time, all they want to know is, okay, does Johnny need braces? How long is it going to take, and what's it going to cost, right? And then why do I care is the most important thing. And, you know, my suggestion, especially to the doctors on the call, is to understand how you're communicating. Try to boil down your discussions into as layman's terms as you possibly can. Be very concise. Let them understand at the very basic level what they need and how long it'll take, how much it costs. And then let them ask you for more detail. And most of the time they won't. And then when somebody does, you know, we have a lot of engineers here in Detroit and they want to know all the details. When somebody asks you for the details, go ahead and give it to them. But don't give all the details to everyone because they don't need it. And more often than not, you wind up confusing the people and they get analysis paralysis and they wind up leaving just because they don't understand, or you make them scared by telling them something because they don't understand and makes it sound painful or complicated or expensive. So try to be really clear and concise with your communication. Johnny's got an overbite. He needs some braces. I think it's going to take 1.5 years or less. You know, we should be good to go. And you'll be surprised at how effective that can be and how little questions there are most of the time. And so how does all of this apply to orthodontics? Well, that's part 2. And so what I've done for you this evening is set some of the psychological and mindset related foundational pieces that are necessary for the next part, which is how to implement, you know, the recipe for same-day starts to work in your practice. Follow up shortly is going to be Dr. Jeff Kozlowski, who's going to give you, who's, in my opinion, you know, the world's leading authority on efficiencies and office efficiencies, and he's going to give you some amazing and mind-blowing tools on how to become more efficient in your office and in your schedule. And then we'll be back at the beginning part of the year talking about the exact recipe on how to implement same-day starts in your practice, as well as a bunch of other cultural and necessary things so that hopefully you can develop the practice of your dreams that can continue to improve year over year. I appreciate your time this evening. If you have any questions for me, you can go ahead and reach out on the internet. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram, although I am relatively slow to reply. All is not lost if I don't get back to you for a week or so. Or you can reach out through OrthoFi, who have my contact information. So thank you, OrthoFi, for the time and the opportunity to share some of this information. And I look forward to speaking with you all again in the second part. And then I also, with Kaz, will be around at the end of the presentation this evening for a live question and answer session. So thank you very much.